Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. My name is John Bush with Live Free Academy. And this week, I'm going to be delivering a series of videos counting down the Bitcoin halving. That's right. Many of you have heard the halving is coming. The halving is coming. Some folks don't know what the heck that means or what we crypto folks are talking about. Well, worry not, whether you know what it's all about or you're like, what the heck are you talking about, John? We're going to demystify it. We're going to break it all down. And of course, we're going to explore it in the broader context of how does it affect you? Now, my name's John Bush again with Live Free Academy. We help people to create greater freedom, prosperity, and community in their lives. And I've been involved in the Bitcoin crypto world for over 10 years now. I got involved because I care deeply about freedom, and I recognized how central banks are perhaps one of the biggest hindrances to human freedom, to flourishing. They finance foreign wars of aggression. They finance big government programs. And I quickly came to realize that Bitcoin provides an opportunity for us to circumvent and overcome the legacy financial institutions. Well, there's a whole lot that's gone on in the Bitcoin and crypto world since I got started back in 2013 is really when I leaned into it. Things are changing at a very rapid rate. In fact, even saying the word crypto offends some Bitcoin people, and there's this big debate about Bitcoin as a store of value, but I thought it was electronic cash. What about these other cryptocurrencies like Ethereum and Bitcoin Cash and Monero? Well, there's a lot to break down, there's a lot to understand, and I am going to do everything I can to help you navigate that world. So we are going to be focusing on Bitcoin, Bitcoin mining, the halving, and the economic and financial implications of all of this. How can you come up with a plan for yourself to ensure that you aren't getting hurt, that you aren't making poor decisions, you're not letting emotions lead you and guide you? And I do want to let you know, because things have changed so much, because they're constantly changing, it's challenging to keep up. I actually am putting together a new membership program as part of my company, Live Free Academy, and we're going to be revealing that later on this week. Okay, so definitely keep an eye on these videos. I'll be populating one every day as we count down to the halving. And let me just go ahead and share this here for y'all. The halving is coming up. It is right around the corner. So there's a countdown here. It's coming up in 4 days, 3 hours and 38 minutes. We can expect it on April 19th in the evening time. So don't worry, I'll explain exactly what the halving is. Let's go ahead and get right down to it. I do want to keep these videos somewhat short and concise, so let's roll. First of all, if you're new to Bitcoin, let's answer the question, what the heck is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is a digital currency that allows people to send and receive money without having to trust an intermediary or a third party. It was invented and unleashed into the world in 2009. The idea was concocted in 2008. It was released in 2009 by a pseudonymous person named Satoshi Nakamoto. Maybe it was a group of people, maybe it was a man, maybe it was a woman. But they released this software into the wild. Since then, it has become a global phenomenon and has radically transformed not only the financial world, but also how we share information with one another. So it's been around for a while. It was kind of cast aside as some magic internet money in the early days. It was used for some very subversive things, some online darknet marketplaces like the Silk Road. But since then, it has definitely gained legitimacy and is becoming more and more mainstream. Now, I came into it from some radical revolutionary roots. There's still an element of that with Bitcoin, but some things have changed and shifted. But we'll be sure to break all that down. So, really, Bitcoin is a network. There's different participants, there's different parties, but the important thing to note is that it's decentralized, right? So traditionally, money systems have been centralized, meaning there's one group, one government, one corporation that controls the issuance or regulates it or manages it, right? So think about banks, for example. Banks are financial institutions that hold your money, that issue credit and debt, right? There's central banks, which is like a bank for banks. Central banks issue fiat currencies like the United States dollar. They control and manipulate the money supply. Okay? Even when it comes to Visa or MasterCard, for example, these are corporations that maintain the balances and the credit balances and who's paying what. The challenge with these institutions, let's also throw out Venmo, PayPal, Cash App, Zelle, Google Pay, Facebook Pay. You always have to trust a third party in order to maintain the ledger balance, in order to make sure everything's working smoothly. Now, one of the big challenges with having to trust these third parties, if you're anything like me, you're concerned about the prospect of being shut out of your bank account or being shut out of your ability to send and receive money. Of course, this is what the central bank digital currencies are all about. They're aiming to essentially make fiat currencies digital, completely digital. Most dollars are ones and zeros right now, let's face it. There's very little cash in circulation, but these central bank digital currency systems want to eliminate cash and make all money trackable, traceable, surveilled, and the ultimate problem would be being able to be shut out of your ability to access money altogether. Sounds kind of like the mark of the beast in the book of Revelations, if you ask me. Well, the cool thing about Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, not every single one, but many of them, they're decentralized, okay? And you can access this money system without having to ask permission. You can send and receive money without having to ask permission. And essentially, if you set things up properly using a non-custodial wallet, then you can continue to do business with one another, send and receive money back and forth, and there's nothing the government, the technocrats, or the central bankers can do about it. Okay? So, again, we're talking about the halving. The halving essentially is when the new Bitcoin that get created gets cut in half. All right, so I just want to give a quick little introduction. What is the halving this guy's talking about? Well, let's break down exactly what that means. But in order to understand what the Bitcoin halving is and why there's a big fuss about it, this event that's coming up in approximately 4 days, we need to understand what the Bitcoin blockchain is. Okay? The Bitcoin blockchain is a foundational piece of the Bitcoin system, of the Bitcoin software. Okay? The beauty of the Bitcoin blockchain and this Bitcoin system is that the information, the ledger that maintains who has what Bitcoin, who sent what Bitcoin to whom, it's completely decentralized and distributed. Okay? So, all throughout history, ledgers have been used to record who has what balance, who sent what to whom, debits, credits. Just like a checking account, essentially. You have a series of credits with money coming in, and you have a series of debits with money going out. Well, again, the problem with that is you have to trust a bank or you have to trust a third party to maintain this record. Well, the beauty about Bitcoin and this invention that Satoshi Nakamoto delivered to the world is that this ledger, an account of who owns what Bitcoin and who sent what Bitcoin to whom, it's actually decentralized and distributed on 30, 40, 50, 60,000 different computers all across the world. Let's actually take a look at that right now. This is something that I do in a lot of my workshops. Maybe you're watching this and you've done some of the workshops with me in the past. But check this out. This is actually a website called bitnodes.io. Bitnodes.io. And as you can see, each one of these little heat maps is a heat map. These dots represent a concentration of different computers that are running the Bitcoin blockchain. Again, that's the decentralized distributed ledger. Now, this says 19,152, but there's tens of thousands of more that aren't registered here because they are concealing their IP address. The IP address is like a unique identifier whenever you connect to the internet. As you can see, they're spread out all throughout the world in so many different countries, okay? So again, the key takeaway here is that the Bitcoin blockchain is a ledger. It shows who owns what Bitcoin, who sent what Bitcoin to whom, what your new balance is, and it's decentralized and distributed, okay? Now, there's other pieces of the Bitcoin network we're going to break down, like Bitcoin miners. But before we do that, let me just show you kind of like a visual of the Bitcoin blockchain to help you gain a better understanding. This is a website that I use often called mempool.space. Mempool.space. And it actually shows the recent blocks that were added to the blockchain. Okay, now it's a square, of course, but each block essentially is a collection of transactions that took place in approximately the previous 10 minutes. Okay, so as you can see, this one block, block number 839,370, it had 3,066 transactions included with it. Okay, now when we click on this block here, we can actually see all of the different transactions that are part of it. Okay, so this is effectively the blockchain. We can see the block before that, and we can go all the way back in history to the very first block, which is known as the Genesis block. And as you can see, they're celebrating and excited here too. Bitcoin's fourth halving is in 630 blocks. These are the blocks that are currently being constructed and put together. Okay? Now, one thing to be aware of that I want to share real quick is the Bitcoin blockchain is transparent, meaning all of the transactions that take place, all the different addresses that have been used, that's all visible, okay? So if you've done any workshops with me, or if you'll consider joining the membership I'm going to open up and share about here in a few days, I definitely teach people how to purchase Bitcoin privately so you never tie your identity to your Bitcoin address, how to send and receive Bitcoin privately, but we also explore other cryptocurrencies like Monero, which is completely secret, and every single transaction and all the Bitcoin, all the cryptocurrency addresses on the Monero blockchain are completely obscured. There's a word called obfuscated. It's all hidden, scrambled up, and mixed up together. So just something to be aware when it comes to Bitcoin. Quick note, one thing that differs me from a lot of other people that are in this cryptocurrency, especially the Bitcoin space, is I do find value in other cryptocurrencies. I'm mostly invested in Bitcoin as far as protecting and growing wealth. But when it comes to doing business with one another, circumventing the central bank digital currency system, and continuing to participate in commerce with other freedom lovers when the CBDC system rolls out, I'm a big fan of Monero and another couple cryptocurrencies as well. Okay, so again, Bitcoin is a decentralized, peer-to-peer way to send money and information. It's decentralized because participants in the network are spread out all across the world. They're all participating voluntarily. There's not one central authority, one government, or one corporation that has control over the network. And that's pretty cool, okay? Now let's talk about Bitcoin miners. Maybe you've heard the term before. It conjures up somebody working with a pickaxe, right? Well, that term is used purposefully, Bitcoin mining, because it takes a lot of work to mine Bitcoin. Okay, so a Bitcoin miner essentially is a computer that does the work to solve this puzzle, a mathematical puzzle essentially, to guess at this mathematical puzzle. It does a lot of computing work. It takes a lot of energy, actual electricity, to solve this puzzle. And then the Bitcoin miner or group of Bitcoin miners that solve that puzzle, they are able to verify the transactions that were just sent recently and add the next block to the blockchain. Okay, so let me try to explain that once again, right? So there's the Bitcoin blockchain, and a block gets added every approximately 10 minutes. Well, who adds the block? The block is added by Bitcoin miners. One individual miner, a person, a company running that computer, or maybe it's a group of miners that are working together, okay? There's something called proof of work, which essentially is the algorithm and the system that helps to verify transactions. It helps to keep things decentralized. Oh, a block just got added to the blockchain as we've been sitting here talking about that. There's a new block, 839,371. Pretty cool. Okay, so the Bitcoin blockchain has a new block added approximately every 10 minutes. That block includes the transactions that took place recently on the network. Who adds the blocks to the blockchain? Bitcoin miners. They use a process called proof of work. In order to earn the right to add that next block to the blockchain, and in turn get rewarded with Bitcoin. Okay, it's called the mining reward. Talk about how that plays in with the halving here in a sec. In order to earn the right to solve that next block and add a block to the blockchain, the different mining computers are competing to guess this special number called a nonce. This is called proof of work. Now, the reason why this proof of work takes place, this is a huge innovation. It took me years and years to really wrap my head around it. The reason why this proof of work takes place and why it's so beneficial to the network is because in order to attack the network or cheat on the network and say that when you send 1 Bitcoin, you actually sent 10 to your own wallet, or to change the balances that people have, you would have to overtake a majority of the mining power on the network, meaning you would have to, not only would you have to produce a bunch of these specialized computer chips that run in the mining computers, their whole purpose is to figure out this puzzle, but you would have to use a whole lot of electricity to overtake the network. I'm talking like impractical, impossible amounts of electricity would have to be produced by one party or a group of people participating in order to attack the network, in order to have such computing power with these mining computers that you overtake the network and start manipulating things. Okay? I'm doing my absolute best to explain this in the most simple way possible. It does take a lot of understanding. It's very complex. But when you kind of have a eureka through studying it, you're like, wow, this is a really special system. It's decentralized. There's a bunch of different people that are working on the network. Each one has their own self-interest, but also the interest of the network as a whole. And so they're running these computers. They're competing to solve a puzzle. Whichever computer or group of computers, the miners, that solves this puzzle, they then take all the transactions that took place recently. They compile it into a block. This is all digital. And they add that block to the blockchain. Okay? Now, what happens next? I will say real quick, you don't have to understand all the intricacies of how this process works in order to use Bitcoin or invest in Bitcoin and benefit from Bitcoin. But it is cool to really be like, wow, this is really special, and to see the true value of what's been created. This has never been done before. It's really special, this new technology that has come together to be Bitcoin, okay? So why are people spending money on these machines? Let me just show you real quick. This is a picture of a miner. This is an ant miner. I actually used to operate these. That's a question that comes up a lot in my webinars. You said it was a decentralized computer system. Who's running these computers? How can we trust them? Well, anyone can spin up these mining computers on the network. It does cost money. It does cost electricity, but anyone can do it. In fact, I used to do it. I used to rent out this big utility closet down in San Marcos, and I convinced the landlord to accept Bitcoin as payment for the electricity and renting that little room. Now, this was all going great. It was profitable when the price of Bitcoin was around $600 or $700, but the price crashed down to $200 or $300, and it was no longer profitable to run the machines. Now, looking back, I should have kept them running even at a bit of a loss, because the price of Bitcoin is now $63,000 instead of like $630 or so when I started mining. But hindsight's 20/20. Regardless, anybody can run these computers, and that goes from a small hobbyist that's running one of these machines in their living room, for example, or it could be a medium-sized firm, like a group of people like, hey, let's run Bitcoin. We got this spare room at our office. Let's spin up some machines. Or it could be a massive enterprise with investors, a large company that comes together, pools resources, purchases these machines, puts a big warehouse of these machines near a place that has low electricity costs, like a hydroelectric dam or solar system, okay? And there are large firms now, and there's small people participating on the network. Why would somebody run these machines? Well, of course, you can decentralize the network. The more different parties that are running these mining computers, the more decentralized and resilient, the fewer parties that could try to manipulate things. It's very decentralized, okay? But there's also a reward, an incentive. Whoever solves that magic puzzle by running a bunch of electricity, the electricity is powering a computer, and the computer chips, all they're designed to do is guess this number as fast as possible, the secret number, using this algorithm. And whoever guesses that number, they get to add the next block. They're rewarded with Bitcoin. Okay, so check this out. Every block which gets added to the Bitcoin network approximately every 10 minutes generates Bitcoin. That Bitcoin is then sent to the miner that solves the puzzle and adds the block to the blockchain. Okay, so get this. This is what it's all about. This is the halving, okay? This is the halving. That's what we're talking about. That's what's happening this week. So back in 2009 to approximately 2012 or so, every block produced 50 new Bitcoin. Then approximately 4 years later, or to be specific, 210,000 blocks later, that number got cut in half to 25. Now, approximately every 10 minutes, when every new block gets out of the blockchain, there were 25 new Bitcoin being created. After that, the number got cut in half again to 12.5, which brings us to the current epoch, which is around 2020 to 2024. Currently, every block is producing 6.25 new Bitcoin. Well, coming up in approximately 4 days or so, the 19th, April 19th, it was almost 420, almost April 20th. That number will go from 6.25 to 3.125. Okay? This is what halving is. Every approximately 4 years, or more specifically every 210,000 blocks, the number of new Bitcoin gets cut in half. This means Bitcoin and the new Bitcoin getting created are getting more and more scarce. Now, this is really cool because Bitcoin has an expected rate of inflation. Contrast that with the United States dollar. They're inflating the currency left and right, creating new money to fund foreign wars of aggression, to pay for their programs, to pay for interest on the national debt. That's why it's so expensive to go to the grocery store or to purchase new goods and services, because the value of our money is going down. This is one of the huge value propositions of Bitcoin, and it's why big financial institutions, ETFs, BlackRock, and little retail purchasers are really, really excited about Bitcoin, because they see it as a way to protect their wealth from inflation. Because unlike the United States dollar, which can get inflated willy-nilly left and right like it's going out of style, there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin. It's hard-coded into the Bitcoin protocol, the software. And this, my friends, is Bitcoin's expected rate of inflation. Okay, so what are we looking at here? The red line represents the inflation rate. And as you can see across the bottom, we have the number of blocks, 210,000 so for the first 210,000 blocks, it got cut in half from 50 to 25. Okay? Then it got cut down again after another 210,000. See the number's getting higher as far as the number of blocks. Then we have the years across the top. So the red line is the number of new Bitcoin that get created, and every approximately 4 years, it gets cut in half. It gets smaller and smaller. The blue line represents the number of Bitcoin that are in circulation. And as you can see, in the beginning, there was a bunch of them being created at once. That's why the line is more steep. And then it slowly faded over time, and it'll go all the way until the year 2140. That's when there will be no new Bitcoin that will be created. Again, every approximately 4 years or 210,000 blocks, it'll get cut in half. 6.25, 3.125. Let me see if I can do the math. 1.510125. I don't know. It'll get smaller and smaller. Before you know it, it'll be less than 1, and it'll continue on. Now, this block reward incentivizes miners to run these computers. Costs money. People often ask, what happens when there's no more block reward, or when it gets so small? Well, it's expected that the miners will be incentivized by getting these transaction fees. Every time you send a transaction, there's a transaction fee tied to it. Now, we're going to break this down further because there's a lot of stuff that's been changing. So we got the block reward getting cut in half. That changes the incentive structure. That means mining computers are going to make less money, but also at the same time, every time this happens, the price shoots through the roof, and we enter a massive bull run. So if you've been paying attention to the price, it wasn't but several months ago, the price was 20,000, 30,000. Now it's shot up 70,000. We've reached new all-time highs. As we'll share in future videos in this series later this week as we get closer to the halving event, there's been these trends that we can see repeating every time this halving comes around. There's a minor bull market. Bull market's when prices are going up, leading up to the halving. Then when the halving takes place, the price just skyrockets. Then there's a bear market, and then it starts again the cycle as it gets closer to the next halving. Now, past performance is a good indicator of future performance, but it's not a guarantee. There's a lot of stuff going on in the crypto space, and I have learned a whole lot. I've used cryptocurrency for a decade now, and above all else, I care deeply about my community, people that care about freedom, bodily autonomy, and privacy. I care deeply about us prospering into the future, but more importantly, about us continuing to do business in spite of this technocratic mark of the beast system that's being slowly but surely erected all around us. So I would like to do you guys the service of demystifying what's going on with Bitcoin. What can we expect in the future? What does it mean for there to be half as many new Bitcoin created every approximately 10 minutes? How does this fit in with BlackRock and large financial institutions now buying Bitcoin in order to fulfill the demand of their clients with the ETF, the Exchange Traded Fund? What does this mean for the transaction fees? Every time you send Bitcoin, whether it's $20 or 20,000 or 2 million or $1 billion, there's transaction fees. What does that mean if I'm trying to buy inexpensive products? What does this look like for the future of Bitcoin? And how is it going to affect me as I try to navigate this ever-changing space? Worry not, friends. I got your back. I'm really excited for you to be a part of what we're doing. If you want to keep up with this, if you're watching online or through social media and you're not yet part of our daily email newsletter, I encourage you to sign up so you get alerts when we drop these next videos at livefree.academy/email. That's livefree.academy/email. In a few days, I'll be opening up membership to the Live Free Academy, new membership. I've been pouring my heart and soul into this. I recognize that I do these one-off workshops, but things are constantly changing so fast, faster than any other space I've ever been a part of or studied. So I want you guys to stay with me so I can constantly have your back, to make sure you're not making mistakes and to make sure that you are protected. All right, guys, I want to thank you so much for joining us. Just a quick recap. Bitcoin is a peer-to-peer, decentralized digital currency. It allows people to send and receive money back and forth. It's shaping up to become more of a store of value, kind of like a digital gold. We'll break that down. The foundation of the Bitcoin network is the Bitcoin blockchain, a collection of all the transactions that have taken place in the past. Every approximately 10 minutes, a new block gets added to the blockchain. At the current time, right now, but it's going to change coming up in a few days, with every new block, there's 6.25 new Bitcoin created. Those Bitcoin then get rewarded to the miners who usually sell them to large financial institutions or exchanges. Coming up in a few days, the number of new Bitcoin that get created is going to get cut in half. This is going to have some major implications for the financial sector and the cryptocurrency space, and I want to make sure that you understand it and play your cards right if you're deciding to get involved or if you're deciding to dive deeper. Again, this has been John Bush with the special report. Expect the videos to drop every day on my YouTube channel and other channels and social media. It's been my pleasure to share this information with you. Until tomorrow, stay free, friends. Peace.